Good morning. Thank you everybody for joining us. Today I'm Jano Lieber, the acting chair and CEO of the MTA. I'm joined by my partner, my friend Hank Gutman, the Commissioner of New York City DOT, Craig Cipriano, who's the acting president of New York City Transit, board member Andrew Albert, who also represents riders on the MTA board, and a couple of transit Elisa Dagnalian, who is the chair of the Permanent Citizens Advisory Committee, the MTA, again representing riders, and a couple of advocates, young people who are bus riders, who are advocates for better bus service, and who have been working to make sure our bus service is improved. And we will welcome them to the podium in a moment. I'm proud to be here today with, as I said, my friend Hank Gutman, to take you through some of our ambitious and new plans to revitalize bus service in New York. Hank is someone I've known for many years, and I've seen him in action on many projects in Brooklyn, especially where he's been a civic leader. He was one of the chief people who made Brooklyn Bridge Park happen. He's been the chairman of the Brooklyn Navy Yard, very innovative leader for many years, and I've seen him in his visionary role. So when I came into this new acting chair and CEO role a couple of weeks ago, one of the first things I did was to reach out to Hank to see if we could jointly step up the MTA and the city DOT effort to really dramatically improve our bus system. And Hank had the exact same idea, and today's announcement is the result of that discussion. The city needs a strong transit system more than ever to help lead our recovery from the pandemic. We all know that. And we need the transit system to serve our broader equity goals, which is one reason we're both so focused on the bus system, which disproportionately serves disadvantaged communities and communities of color. Our mission, both the MTA and New York City DOT, is to vastly improve the experience and to increase ridership to give New Yorkers the bus service they deserve. That means cutting commuting times and using every tool at our disposal to make bus travel much faster, much more accessible, and much more attractive. Priority one is adding to and improving the existing network of bus lanes and busways. New York City DOT has set a new goal of up to 20 new miles of bus lanes, including 5 new busways, like the ones we have pioneered on 181st Street and on 14th Street. Busways and bus lanes are the most effective way to increase speeds. The M14, after we installed the busway, improved its travel speeds by 36%. And just this past April, as I mentioned, we opened the 181st Street busway, which increased speeds on 5 branch routes by 34%. We need to replicate those kinds of advances all over the city. And we need to make sure that bus lanes and busways are kept clear, that no cars, no trucks are blocking the progress of the bus and slowing people down. That means enforcement, especially against delivery vehicles and other repeat offenders. We've all seen it. The MTA is working with the city to install hundreds of cameras aboard buses and at fixed locations on key corridors to reduce the number of illegally parked cars and trucks. We're going to expand our coverage, our camera coverage, to 85% of bus lanes by the end of 2023. Another key tool for increasing bus speeds is transit signal priority, so that our buses spend less time at red lights. We're planning our largest expansion of this TSP system since the MTA's first activation, and another 750 intersections are going to get TSP by next year. Additionally, we're looking to leverage the Omni contactless fare payment system with an all-door boarding system on select routes. We're testing it out. Every bus in our 5,800 vehicle fleet now has Omni. That was done during COVID, when obviously ridership and traffic were down. We installed Omni on the whole system. So we actually expect to expand all door boarding system-wide by the time the MetroCard is retired in a year or two. The time has also come to revive our borough-by-borough bus network redesign, redoing all the routes to line up with current ridership patterns. We're going to start with the Bronx again in the fall. We're monitoring emerging ridership patterns to better match with the current needs of our communities. We did this, and we did it successfully already on Staten Island. We're going to give riders more information than ever by adding over 1,000 onboard digital screens by the end of next year, so they can get real-time updates. That will bring the total number of buses with these digital screens to 64% of the fleet. And DOT is also working on prototypes for a new bus time poll at the bus stops, and that's another area of collaboration. As we move forward on all of these upgrades, and it's really comprehensive, we're not losing sight of the need to expand accessibility to the bus system so that every New Yorker can take part in the city's revival. All of our buses are already ADA accessible, but we need to deal with the bus stops. DOT is actually, as part of this announcement, committing to address 25 bus stops that don't have adequate accessibility for wheelchair users and otherwise, and that's a major step forward. And as part of our capital program, the MTA is going to roll out 800 new buses with wider doors and more flexible seating options that can accommodate diverse customer needs, strollers, walkers, wheelchairs, whatever. We're never going to stop looking for ways to make the bus system more attractive for New Yorkers. The bus system alone in New York City is the second largest transit system in the United States, after only the New York City subway system. This is 2 million people a day. We have to make their travel faster and more attractive and more accessible, and we're going to do it starting now. The only way we could be making this announcement is because of my partner and friend, Hank Gutman, and I turn the podium over to Hank. Thank you.
Thank you, Jano, and let me agree with my old friend and oft-times partner that it's a treat to be able to work together again on making bus travel safer, better, more accessible for all New Yorkers. Anybody who tries to address transit problems in this city quickly discovers that one of the challenges is that the responsibilities are divided among an alphabet soup of different agencies. As a result, real progress often requires two agencies to put aside whatever institutional differences in approach, etc., they may have, and work seamlessly together for the common good of the people of New York. Nowhere is this clearer than when it comes to buses. The MTA provides the buses, the drivers, the routes, the schedules, and the DOT is responsible for the streets on which all this happens. Meaningful change and improvement can only happen when these two agencies work seamlessly together as one. And that is precisely the point of today's announcement and why I'm so delighted to be here today. For over 2 million New Yorkers, our buses are the primary, sometimes the only, meaningful form of mass transit to which they have access. Everything we can do to speed up travel times, to make bus stops more accessible, to improve on schedules and rationalize bus routes has a profound impact on the daily lives of vast numbers of New Yorkers. And all of these issues are related, which is why Jano and I were focusing on having a comprehensive announcement today. For example, to speed up buses, we create bus lanes and busways. But the system doesn't work without enforcement, which is why today we're announcing a joint effort to improve enforcement through more cameras in the buses and on the streets. If you speed up bus travel times, as we've done, the busways and bus lanes on average are producing 30+% improvements in travel times. But the buses end up having to wait at red lights, you've sort of defeated the purpose, which is why we're focusing on transit signal prioritization. It's all part of the package. And buses have schedules. And if they aren't revised to reflect the new enhanced bus travel times, again, you defeat the whole purpose of speeding up the system and making it more efficient and more attractive. And of course, none of this works unless we make the entire system accessible to all New Yorkers, which is why we're proud and delighted to commit to improve accessibility of bus stops and bus stations. So this is why I am particularly proud to be here today to join Jano and Craig, our partners at the MTA, and to announce a series of joint initiatives our agencies have come up with together to improve bus services for those who need it the most, and to commit that this is the beginning of the partnership. This isn't the end. We will have more to say going forward, but we thought this was an important first step. And before handing over the podium to my friend Craig, I do want to thank a couple of my colleagues at the DOT without whom this wouldn't be possible. And there are three in particular: my Chief Strategic Officer, Jimmy Kim, Eric Beaton, Deputy Commissioner, and Assistant Commissioner Janet Jenkins. All of them accepted the challenge to sit down with our partners at the MTA and come up with a comprehensive list of things we could agree on and announce together. And they did it in record time. So thanks to everybody. And here's Craig.
Thank you, Hank. Thank you. Picking up on what Jano said, excuse me, at the height of the pandemic, our bus system carried more people than any other transit agency in North America. Whether we were carrying essential workers to their jobs or essential New Yorkers to the grocery store or to their doctor, our transit heroes were here to keep us moving. We proved just how important this bus system is to the lives of New Yorkers. And as the city recovers and transit and traffic congestion returns, we must do everything we can to encourage ridership growth. We know that well-enforced bus priority is the key to an effective bus system. That's why our close partnership with New York City DOT and NYPD is so critical as we look to substantially improve. And we know that our streets will be impassable if even a small portion of our customers return to their cars. The plan laid out today is ambitious because this moment in time calls for a transit-driven recovery. Importantly, we have already laid out some of the groundwork. For example, last year, despite the pandemic, we completed 16.4 miles of bus lanes, more than double the average from the previous 6 years. And our commitment today improves on that at an aggressive pace. Last year, we added over 600 new transit signal priority intersections, the most since the program began. And this plan builds on that and goes much further. And as we look ahead, we are making bolder commitments to all-door boarding, automated enforcement, and bus network redesign. Because we want to show everyone just how serious we are about prioritizing bus service here in New York. Last year, the bus system literally carried New Yorkers through this pandemic. And today we are here to make sure it is going to carry us out of it. I want to say a special thank you to the advocate community for always pushing us and challenging us to do better. I want to thank Jano and Hank for leading this critical charge on bus priority. And I want to thank all our close partners at New York City DOT and NYPD who are always right there with us to help us move New Yorkers when they need us most. And of course, I'm always here to say, if you're not a bus, stay out of our bus lanes. Thank you very much. That's okay.
Sorry. Hello, everyone. My name is Darlene Jackson, and I'm a member of Riders Alliance, the grassroots organization that fights for better transportation in New York City. I live in a Soundview section of the Bronx, and I rely on buses as a primary mode of transportation. I want to thank the MTA and DOT for their announcement today and committee to important projects to improve buses. Better buses are integral to New York City's recovery, and these projects mark a bold step forward for the city's millions of bus riders like myself. New York City is plagued with the slowest buses in the country. Speeding up bus service has always been important, but this year it has become even more critical as the city reopens after a grueling shutdown. Folks are going back to work, students are going back to school, and people are looking for new opportunities that only the bus get them to. Fixing our city buses is a key piece of having a more just and equitable city. Buses serve outer boroughs, communities like the Bronx, where I live, and buses were the main source of transportation for essential and frontline workers throughout the pandemic. There are nurses, grocery workers, pharmacists, home health care aides, transit workers, and millions of people who aren't able to work from home. These workers deserve fast, reliable service to get to work, appointments, and spend less time on the bus and more time with their families. The average bus rider can afford to jump into an Uber if their bus is delayed or canceled. Instead, they have to wait 30 to 40 minutes or even more for a bus to arrive. We need buses to show up for the riders who depend on them, and in order to do that, buses need to have the priority on our congested streets. The bus projects announced today are a great way to start fixing our city buses. We look forward to seeing these projects fully implemented in the coming year, and I hope the projects can set a precedent for what we achieve in the future to transform the city buses. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Nathan Lloyd. I'm a college student at Queensborough Community College and a member of the Strap-Hangers campaign. I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today. I'm from Jamaica, Queens, where many people rely on buses. I depended on buses prior to the pandemic regularly to meet up with friends or to get to school. My life would be very different if buses didn't exist, because buses get people to places they need to be. Many places in New York, like my college for instance, aren't accessible by walking or the subway. So you have to take the bus in order to get there. There's no other way. And while buses are essential to my life, they're not always an easy ride. Most of the time my bus gets crowded and stuck in traffic, making it impossible to get anywhere on time. There are often long lines of people waiting for the bus, tons more when high school students are let out of their classes. This usually leads to overly crowded buses with way too many people packed onto a single bus. Despite it all, taking the bus is more affordable and much better for the environment than taking a car. By adding new bus lanes and busways to our streets, and by keeping bus lanes clear and our busways clear and redesigning the city's bus network, taking the bus can be the faster and more reliable option too. As bus riders, we deserve better. And with today's announcement, the MTA and DOT are taking huge steps towards improving the commutes of riders just like me. Thank you.
As the rider representative on the MTA board and chair of the Transit Riders Council, I get complaints from people, both good comments and frequently bad comments. And one of the bad comments I usually hear is, the buses are so slow. Well, some of the announcements that we've heard today can help fix those problems. Yes, buses are slow with double parked vehicles making deliveries, people dropping people off, and non-enforcement of existing bus lanes. The fact that we're going to be having all-door boarding with Omni on certain routes is going to really speed up your boarding and allow buses to get underway much more quickly. Transit signal prioritization, where buses will have the ability to approach a light, tell it it's a bus, and get the light to change so the bus can continue, is going to speed up. On my own community board, we've located 11 different intersections that we would like to see transit signal prioritization installed at, which we believe will help speed our buses. Wherever you live in the city, it's much more likely that you're near a bus stop than you are a train stop. And it's great that people want to take the bus to the train or to the commuter train or to the airport or whatever, but we need the buses to be more user-friendly. Enforcement of existing bus lanes with more cameras is one step that's definitely going to make a difference. If people think they're going to get ticketed, they won't go in the bus lane. Obviously, installation of more bus lanes is a priority, and we're certainly willing to speed that up as much as humanly possible. It's great that DOT would like to do that as well. And again, having Omni everywhere is going to make everybody's life easier. Your fare will be on your phone, on an MTA-issued Omni card. face it, the Metro card is way out of date now and needs to be replaced. Nobody wants to see swipe again here. In fact, in the bus alone, it takes something like 4 seconds for the bus reader to read your card and then spit it back out at you. With Omni, it's just a tap and you're on your way. So today's announcements, I think, are great news for all bus riders, train riders, and everybody who uses our transit system, which is obviously the economic engine of the entire region. So kudos to the MTA and DOT for this announcement today. Thank you.
Okay, I think you're hearing consistent theme. One is the actions we're taking today are going to make buses faster and more accessible in many different ways. And two, that there's a dramatic upgrade in the collaboration between the MTA and the city agencies to deliver a better bus system. And three, a partnership with the advocacy community that really is helping us to move forward on this hugely important issue that 2 million New Yorkers a day depend on. So with that, let me take questions, and we'll include everybody here in responding as appropriate.
Jano, I actually have two questions. The first one has to do with what the new bus routes and the new busways, what effect it will have on the transit deserts that are so important to getting congestion pricing passed.
Well, when you say transit desert, you're talking principally about areas that don't have a lot of commuter rail service or subway service and that really depend on the bus. And that includes areas like Soundview, which Darlene mentioned, the Northeast Bronx, East Flatbush, all of Southeast Queens. There's a lot of it, and there aren't great rail connections in many parts of it. So what we're trying to do is to make sure that in those areas, if people just have buses, that the bus service is really faster and more reliable. And that's going to make a huge difference in their lives. Right now, they don't have big choices. They can't go to commuter rail. They can't go to subways. They rely on the bus. And this is going to make the bus faster and better for them. And will connect them to jobs, to education, to everything New York has to offer. Now, one final thought. We are attacking transit deserts across the board at the MTA. And two lessons in that is the 2nd Avenue subway. East Harlem is a transit desert, and it's been promised for 50 years. And the East Bronx, where we're putting in what we call Metro North to Penn, 4 new stations on Metro North in the East Bronx: Co-op City, Parkchester, Morris Park, and Hunts Point. So we're attacking transit deserts with buses, but also with the rail and subway system.
The second question has to do with congestion pricing. There's a new governor that's coming in. She may be from upstate. She may not have the same priorities as the present governor. I wonder what effect you think she's going to have on congestion pricing and the MTA's timetable for having congestion pricing up and running.
It wouldn't be fair for me to speculate. Obviously, the lieutenant governor, soon to be governor, is getting briefed and starting to focus her policy agenda, get her team together. So let's give her a chance to do that. But what I can tell you is what the MTA and DOT are doing is we are collaboratively, along with state DOT, working very closely with the Federal Highway Administration, which is part of the federal U.S. Department of Transportation, to nail down a really aggressive schedule for the environmental process. And we're getting close to resolving that. In the meantime, there's a ton of work on the design of this congestion pricing system, and we're actually testing it out in a couple places. So there's a lot of work going on. It's probably premature to say we're just nailing it down, but I think that we're close to resolving that once and for all. But I'm going to defer to my colleague, Mr. Gutman.
Very briefly, on the transportation desert question, like the MTA, we're focusing all of our activities, not just buses, but bikes, e-scooter pilots, all of our different efforts. We focus very hard on addressing transportation deserts because those obviously need help. And as to congestion pricing, it's simple. We want it as quickly as we can possibly get it consistent with the law, and we will keep working toward that goal.
I've got one on topic and one off topic. On the on topic question, I heard, I'm not sure if it was you, Jano, or you, Hank, talk about the traffic signal mobilization, prioritization for buses. We've heard about that before. Is it up and running anywhere right now in the city? Does it require Albany to give you some kind of right of way? And if it's so useful, why not just start installing them all over the city to speed up the buses sooner rather than later?
Sure. So we have, I think it's over 1,000 intersections right now. Oh, sorry. Well over 1,000 intersections right now with transit signal priority. It's a joint collaboration with New York MTA and DOT. The way that works is, the buses send a signal to DOT's Central Traffic Command Center, and then it'll either hold the red or turn it green. It's one of the tools in our toolbox to create better bus service along with bus lanes and the like. But, it's just not about turning on a transit signal priority. There's, some traffic engineering that's involved, has to make sure that, cross streets and the like don't get interfered with. So we are moving ahead expeditiously. I think the goal we set today was 750 in 2022 and more and beyond.
Craig referred to the fact that it's not as simple as just turning on a switch. I mean, there are other people who cross those intersections too, like pedestrians, cyclists, etc. So it does require some work and it does require some coordination. But what you heard here today was a commitment to expanding and increasing it, and we'll do it as quickly as we responsibly can.
Got it. My off-topic question has to do with two bits of viral video that are out there. One of them. Okay, come on back.
Some of the solutions that you have sound fairly simple. What do you say to critics that wonder why this hasn't happened sooner? And if Craig can address, when you say if you're parked in the bus lane, you better get out or else, what is going to be the enhanced enforcement and the fine schedule, sir?
So over the next 2 years, right, we're going to be adding 1,000 buses with automated bus lane enforcement cameras. That is a complement to the fixed post cameras which DOT manages. And, the legislation around those the violations that occurs, for the first time it's $50. The second time it was $50, all the way up to $250 for each individual occurrence. And then it'll be $250 after that. I'm sorry. So, currently we've given out about 100,000 violations since the start of this program. That's only on 123 buses. Again, when we expand this to 1,000 buses, this is another tool in our toolbox along with manual enforcement as we work with NYPD. We want to have a robust marketing campaign, which you've already seen on board buses, to tell people stay out of our bus lanes. I think it's a part of a broader strategy to keep those bus lanes and busways clear and get our buses moving.
What were some of the roadblocks that prevented a program like this big announcement today? I know it sounds simple, but it's not. Like you said, there's studies to be done in engineering and traffic patterns. But when critics say, how come this couldn't have happened sooner, what would you say in response?
Well, what I would say is I think a lot of work has been done in years past, right? And you've seen that. I think we have well over 150 now miles of bus lanes. We've got, I think there's 5 or 6 busways. You've seen 14th Street, 181st Street. There's been very close collaboration between the MTA and DOT in the past. But I think as we come out of the pandemic, we all recognize that we wanted to ramp that up, right? To really make a statement here that we need a transit-led recovery, to bring riders back and say, although it might look like the work has stopped over the course of the last 18 months, it really hasn't, and we're going to build upon all that hard work and put it on steroids, so to speak.
Follow up, as far as cleaning measures, Nathan mentioned the congestion for college students. What are we doing for cleaning measures as we move forward?
So we're still disinfecting every bus, every rail car, and every 24 hours, and disinfecting the stations. We've upgraded our filter systems on board both rail and buses to the latest high efficiency filters.
So Jano, on congestion pricing, the Times story today had the Lieutenant Governor saying that she wanted to re-examine the pace and evaluate further what's going on with congestion pricing given COVID, she said. And the MTA also announced in that story that it was going to take 16 months to do the environmental assessment. So are you worried that she's talking about reevaluating things, slowing things down, even after there's been a news that there's going to be about a year and a half for this study?
Dave, in fairness, you know too much about the federal environmental process to think 16 months is a long time. It took me 2 years. It took me 2 years to get the Penn Station access, the Metro North service through the East Bronx, was a 2-year environmental assessment to put a couple more trains on an existing Amtrak line. That's how long it took. The Trump administration, who was not friendly to environmental process, was trying to said they were trying to really attack environmental reviews, and they wanted to make them no more than 2 years. What we're working towards with the feds is 16 months for a project that's not one line, but that encompasses 28 counties, 22 million people, and the most extensive outreach, including environmental justice outreach, that's ever been done. So we're excited that the schedule that we're working on, it's not finalized, but with the state DOT and the federal government is really, really aggressive and is going to deliver congestion pricing promptly. As for the lieutenant governor, as I said before, in fairness to her, she's putting her team together, she's getting briefed on the issues. We got to give her a chance to formulate, get a little more background before we speculate on what her views on any of these issues are. But in the meantime, our collaboration is very much in force in favor of moving aggressively with congestion pricing.
And then in terms of future busway, bus lane improvements, installations, what have the DOT, MTA been learning about the current ones that have been put together to make sure that we don't end up with something like Archer Avenue, which has been delayed by a year, Fifth Avenue, which isn't happening anymore? What's being learned to ensure these roadblocks are no longer in the way?
No, it's a good question, Dave, and you hit one of my favorite examples with Archer Avenue. So to begin with, what we've learned is when we put in busways and put in bus lanes, we can count on significant, very substantial increases in speed of the buses on those routes, which enhances the quality of life of the people who rely on those buses to get around every day. So that's an important contribution, and that experience has encouraged us to want to do more. What we've also learned early in the process is that every time we propose one of these, there will almost always be someone in the community who doesn't like the idea, right? This is New York, welcome to the big city. And so an important part of it, and something that explains some of the delay, is that we have to go through a process. We have to hear people respectfully, we have to consider their concerns and their objections, and then try and do in the end what's right for the people of that community and the people of the city. And sometimes that takes time, but it's time well spent. Because it's respecting the views of New Yorkers. But what our experience shows is that they are dramatically successful when we put them in. So it's worth the time, it's worth the effort, it's worth the contention, and it's worth sometimes the fight, because looking back on them, they've all been successful and end up often being more popular in the community than one might have thought based on the initial reaction. And you mentioned Archer. Okay, Archer was delayed because there was an issue as to whether the busway should be on Archer or on Jamaica. And we went out with some of the elected officials, we spent an afternoon looking at the site, and the conclusion we reached was that the correct answer was both. So it's going to be one of the biggest and most impactful bus transformations that we've enacted on both Archer and Jamaica, serving 250,000 people every day in one of the biggest transit hubs in the city of New York. So if it took a little time to get a dramatically better result, which the community seems to like, it's worth it.
But with something like Fifth Avenue, which just disappeared, I mean, is there anything that you've learned to avoid something like that happening?
Fifth Avenue hasn't disappeared.
Hi, Jano. I just wanted to get some points of clarification on the network redesigns you mentioned.
I think I'm going to
that
defer to Craig.
Might be Craig. You said you're reviving these network redesigns. Will they be as they were pre-pandemic, or are you making any adjustments since?
No. So the operations planning team, the road operations team, has been hard at work feeding those thousands and thousands of comments we had specifically on the Queens network redesign back in there, and similarly on Bronx redesign. Where we left off, we had a public hearing. We listened to the public comments, so we fed them back in, and when we do kick that back off, you see some new plans.
And what are the first benchmarks we can expect from this bus redesign? When is the first one in the Bronx going to be implemented, for example, or when are you holding public hearings? Any kind of benchmarks you can give?
Sure. So this fall, just to be clear, we're going to restart the whole system-wide network redesign process. So we left off with the Bronx was going to be implemented. Queens, we had a draft plan, and then Brooklyn, we also had a plan out there. So we're going to restart the whole process with community board hearings, elected meetings. But the first milestone that we're sharing today is that we're targeting June of 22 implementation for the Bronx redesign.
Your plan is really ambitious, you're very comprehensive, you're doing quite a few things, and I'm sure they're all important. But what do you think is the most important thing you're doing? And also, what are the things you're doing first?
I think DOT should answer that as well, because this is a true partnership. But I think when we have more bus lanes, where buses don't have to compete with delivery vehicles, with FedEx trucks, with UPS trucks, with all the different delivery vehicles, with people parking, that buses can go a lot faster. That's going to make the bus system so much more attractive to New Yorkers. 2 million New Yorkers will have faster travel if we have more bus lanes and more busways. That makes a huge difference. And we're going to redesign the network of buses so that we're actually giving people more convenient bus service that really goes to and from more quickly where they want to go. Hank?
Yeah, I'd say the most important thing we're doing is collaborating this closely, forming an interagency partnership. No team colors, no uniform shirts. Sit down in a conference room or on a web call and work it out together, and you don't leave the room until you do. So that's the most important thing we're doing. In terms of the components of the plan, if I had to pick one, I think enforcement's really important, because as everybody's observed, to mark a bus lane's one thing. To have it function the way it should, clear of people who aren't supposed to be there, is something else again. And to the extent that the enhanced use of cameras, both on the streets and in the buses, can make that more of a reality, that I think would be a huge help. Thanks.
Hi, could you please elaborate on the upgrades to the Omni system? Will the Metro cards be phased out completely by 2023, like you said?
You want to take a shot? Because I'm not sure.
So are you referring to the Omni system onboard buses specifically? So the Omni system is functional on all our buses right now. And they, as you probably know, we have readers on the back door that are currently not functioning, right? So the plan as it was we would implement all door boarding with the full implementation of Omni, so that you could also get a card at your local pharmacy, or or add a network card if in fact you were unbanked and needed to use cash. What we said in this announcement today is that we are going to pilot on 10 routes across the city all door boarding on that route, because we want to gather information. We want to know that those who are using cash, they still have the opportunity to use it at the front door. We want to see how that speeds up our buses. We want to take a look at some routes with narrow spacing, wider spacing. We're going to gather information to see if potentially there is an opportunity, maybe because the value is so great, that we accelerate that commitment. But regardless, we are committed to all door boarding with the full implementation of Omni.
There are two bits of viral video I wanted to get your take on. Over the weekend, it was revealed that a motorman in Brooklyn let his girlfriend drive a D train. Have you seen this footage, and what action has been taken? And how concerned are you that employees think they can do this kind of thing?
Well, look, I saw the footage. The employee's been taken out of service, and the disciplinary process is underway. I think it's premature to speak about it, but obviously we're not going to let untrained, unauthorized people into the cab to take control of a train or otherwise. That's totally unacceptable, and actions are underway to deal with it and make sure it doesn't happen again. Craig?
Yeah, so just one other thing I want to say is that not only was that a violation of our policy, but it was an egregious violation of public trust. It's something that I haven't seen in my 32 years here working at the MTA. So, I take something like that very, very seriously. As Jano said, that train operator is taken out of service. I don't want to comment on the disciplinary proceedings, but we will conduct a full investigation. And then again, as long as I'm president, I don't foresee that train operator driving a train for us again.
And the second bit of video, it was out from this morning. This involves someone espousing an anti-mask viewpoint, apparently berating a senior citizen for wearing a mask. Don't know which train this happened on, but how concerned are you that amid the politicization of masks and vaccines, that we could see more of this type of thing in the transit system?
Well, you know, assuming this is real and not one of those ridiculous pranks that sometimes people get involved with, this is outrageous. Number one, the guy is a jerk. Every New Yorker who gets on the subway knows that one of the first principles is you treat other people respectfully, and this is like an incredible, egregious violation of basic human decency and respect. We New Yorkers share the public space. It's one of the most, one of the most, definitional things about New York. We share the public space, and we know how to share it with others, and we're respectful of each other. So the guy is completely out of line. Number two, we've had great success with mask compliance. I ride the train, every day, and people are complying with masks, even though there was a little backsliding when we started all to get a little more casual about masks. But it's back. Compliance is way up, I believe, and we're going to make sure that mask compliance happens. We're not going to yield any ground to people who want to bring whatever political ideology or theory they have, especially those that are totally unscience-based, into our system. We're going to continue to aggressively encourage and make sure that people wear masks for science reasons, but also out of respect for each other.